Adam Housley. Adam Housley, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Off the field and into the studio for you today.
Hopefully no more disasters for a while.
No.
Nice.
Please.
Great reporting,
Please,
though.
yes.
Well done.
Thank you for everything that you do. And thanks to everybody here. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. We are back Monday, live at noon Eastern time. I'm sorry, where am I? Now here's Julie Banderas. Take it away, Julie.
And we begin with a Fox News alert, and good afternoon to you. The new details on President Trump's border crackdown coming out. Welcome to Outnumbered Overtime. I'm Julie Banderas in for Harris Faulkner today. The president's saying he wants to send between 2,000 and 4,000 National Guard members to America's border with Mexico, and he wants them to stay there until his wall is built. The commander-in-chief emphasizing the need for strong borders to stop illegal immigration and drug trafficking during an event in West Virginia.
We have to have strong borders. We're going to have the wall. We've already started building it. We have $1.6 billion. We've started building it and fixing miles and miles of wall that's already up and fence. And we're going to have our wall, and we're going to get it very strongly. The military is going to be building some of it.
National security correspondent Jennifer Griffin joins us now from the Pentagon. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Julie. Well, we may get the first on-camera reaction from Defense Secretary Mattis here just moments from now. He's hosting an honor cordon for the Defense Minister of Slovenia, the First Lady's home country. At a press briefing here yesterday, Pentagon officials could give no timeline for when the troops would be in place, but they did announce they will be standing up a new planning cell here. It will be manned 24/7 to liaise with DHS, and gave some hints about what they might do along the border.
The National Guard's efforts will include aviation, engineering, surveillance, communications, vehicle maintenance, and logistical support. These National Guard members will act in support of Border Patrol agents who are performing law enforcement duties.
Defense officials tell me it could take up to 2 months before all the Guard units are in place. That's the way the bureaucracy works. They could not say what the rules of engagement would be or whether they envision the National Guard being armed.
So those are exactly the questions that we're answering now. I don't have answers for you on any of those. Our bias is always that soldiers are able to defend themselves and they have the right of self-defense. However, we're going to be guided by the dialogue that's going on now between DHS and the governors, and then we'll work that here internally.
The President and Pentagon indicated U.S. troops might also help build part of the wall on military property along the border. They were referring to the Barry Goldwater live fire range in southwest Arizona, but that base runs along just 31 miles of the roughly 2,000-mile border and sees jets dropping bombs daily, so it's not clear how many illegal migrants cross that section of the border owned by the military on any given day, since the possibility of being killed is already high. Julie?
All right, Jennifer Griffin, thank you very much. Our first guest backs the president's border plan. Dan Patrick is the Republican lieutenant governor of Texas. Thank you very much for talking to us. So there is no timetable, as we all know, for the wall. So with that being said, how long do you foresee thousands of National Guard troops stationed at the Mexican border?
As long as it takes, Julie. We've had the Guard there before, and the latest was when Rick Perry, right before Governor Abbott and I took office 4 years ago, Rick Perry sent the Guard down there. It had a significant impact, and we are in total support of what the President is doing. You know, as I listen to the description of some of the things they would be doing, one of the things you have to understand that frees up law enforcement and Border Patrol to have more people on the border. When the National Guard is doing a lot of the other work behind the scenes, that helps put more law enforcement on the border. Secondly, they will be in surveillance on the border, and their very presence, the very fact that people on the other side trying to cross into our country illegally, will send a strong message, as it has before, and the President is doing the right thing, and we're all in. And as I said last night on Fox, I hope they'll stay there until hell freezes over, until that wall is built. We need the wall.
Yes, and the wall obviously would stop a lot of the crime that we see on the border. But you obviously support the decision. What then would you say to critics who argue that illegal border crossings are actually down, and they see this as an unnecessary waste of resources?
Well, they're wrong, and they've been wrong. We in Texas spent $800 million in our last 2 budgets because we had to put money up where the federal government under Obama did not act. So we had to act. And we know that with more troopers, we put close to 500 troopers down there, either permanently or rotating, to help Border Patrol. Think of it as a football game. The Border Patrol is your defensive line, and our local law enforcement are the linebackers and the cornerbacks, because we take care of them if they get past Border Patrol. But we need more federal help. We shouldn't have to spend $800 million of Texas taxpayer dollars. It should be the federal government, and that's why we appreciate what the president's doing. Keep this in mind, Julie, that every Democrat and liberal that you have talking about this issue on the air is either just flat out lying to you, or they just have a bias, or they're uninformed. We have criminals across the border on a regular basis, hardened criminals. Over the last 7 years, we've put in jail over 245,000 illegal aliens, most of them here, criminal aliens, most of them here illegally. We've charged them with over 650,000 crimes. Those crimes committed now are on their rap sheet. That includes over 500 murders, over 3,000 sexual assaults, thousands of drug crimes, thousands of gun crimes. This is real. And, Julie, something that's not talked about, we capture and apprehend people from the Middle East coming here, from China coming here. Why are people coming here from the Middle East, crossing our border illegally? This is not just about people coming from Central America, like gang members that want to come and join MS-13 and other gangs. These are potential terrorists. The idea that any Democrat or any liberal does not want to secure our border, to me, they're not upholding their oath of protecting the Constitution and the laws of this country, and that includes the governor of California if he doesn't join the president. And
it needs to be said, the Border Patrol agents there that have been guarding the border and trying to do so have been putting their lives on the line, but been murdered in the process. They need backup. And one could argue, could they not, that this is very much like sending U.S. troops to Afghanistan to try to hold terrorists at bay. Look what happened when you pulled troops out of Afghanistan. The crime then increased. So by putting these National Guardsmen there would in essence do the same thing, would it not?
Well, putting the National Guard there backs up the men and women of U.S. Border Patrol, our local sheriffs, and our state troopers who put their lives on the line every day. I've been to the border many times, and every time I hear a liberal on Fox talk about, no criminals are crossing the border, no terrorists are crossing the border, these are people who have never been there. They have no clue what they're talking about. And every sheriff in America, by the way, Julie, is a border sheriff, because every sheriff in every county in every state understands that they deal with illegal criminals. Look at MS-13 on Long Island. The sheriffs all over the country know this. Law enforcement knows this. The president, yes, apprehensions were down when he came in because he took a strong stand, and now because Congress won't act, the Democrats are blocking the funding for the wall. He's now moving his words to action, and I think he's doing the right thing. And Congress needs to fund the border wall. And, Julie, we don't need it over every inch of the border. We have about 1,200 miles of the 1,900 in Texas with Mexico. There's some natural barriers. You can do it with electronic in some areas. But where we have big cities, the major crossings, that's where we need the wall to extend miles out, because when they cross there, they just meld into the population, and they're hard to spot. In the smaller areas, we can spot them from the air. They're out in no man's land. We can get them. But we need the wall, especially around all those major border crossings.
All right, Dan Patrick, the Republican Lieutenant Governor of Texas, we thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
You bet.
Fox News alerts the Trump administration targeting Russia, announcing new sanctions on dozens of individuals and companies with ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, the White House is saying it is in response to several actions taken by Russia, including election meddling.
What we've seen when they used the nerve agent, we stood with our allies on this issue, and we took action. We have to do what's right for America, and what's right in this case is, as Congress did pass this law that the president signed, is taking these additional actions against those individuals who have tremendous political influence in Russia.
And President Trump releasing a statement saying in part that, and I'm quoting, "We cannot allow those seeking to sow confusion, discord, and rancor to be successful." Rich Edson is live at the State Department for us with the very latest there. Hi, Rich.
Good afternoon, Julie. And senior administration officials say the United States is now targeting Russian President Vladimir Putin's inner circle, going after oligarchs, business leaders, and even a family member. The Treasury Department today announcing that they are sanctioning 7 Russian oligarchs, 12 companies that they own or control, and 17 senior Russian government officials. The list includes one of the world's largest aluminum producers, top oil and finance executives, and even Vladimir Putin's son-in-law. In a statement, the Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin writes, quote, "The Russian government operates for the disproportionate benefit of oligarchs and government elites. Russian oligarchs and elites who profit from this corrupt system will no longer be insulated from the consequences of their government's destabilizing activities. Now, what these sanctions do is they essentially cut these Russians, the entities, the individuals, off from the bulk of the international finance system. It prevents Americans, U.S. companies from conducting business with these Russians. It also freezes their assets. And that's a real problem for wealthy Russians, especially those who have property in Western Europe, in places like London, and even in the United States. The reason that the U.S. enforced these sanctions, according to senior administration officials, is because of behavior from the Russian government that dates well before the Trump administration. The seizure and annexation of Crimea in Ukraine, the backing of the Assad regime in Syria, and election interference here in the United States and other countries around the world. And just last night, American diplomats that were kicked out of Russia, they returned to Washington. Remember, the U.S. kicked out 60 Russian diplomats. That was in response to Russia or the suspected poisoning of a spy in the United Kingdom by the Russian government that the U.S. and the U.K. say is very likely the Russian government is to blame for that. And so this back and forth continues ongoing. We're still waiting to hear what the Russian government response specifically is to these sanctions, but officials here are certainly waiting for it. No response yet from the Kremlin or Moscow. Julie?
All right. Thank you very much, Rich Hudson. And for more on this, let's bring in Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs, Republican member of the House Judiciary Committee. Thank you so much for talking to us. We are still waiting for Russia to be punished for the meddling in the 2016 elections. They were recently punished for the attempted murder of a former Russian spy after a record number of Russian diplomats were expelled by nations around the world. Is this the next step in trying to put Russia in its place?
Yeah, you know, you really have to take specific measures. And what we have found with sanctions is sometimes sanctions are applied too broadly. But here when you start targeting your recipients of sanctions, that has a direct impact, and it deters and it punishes and it actually changes behavior. And so I think this is a great move on the part of the president to try to bring the Russians to heel.
Yeah, the question is it going to work? I mean, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin put it this way, that Russian oligarchs and elites who profit from this corrupt system will no longer be insulated from the consequences of their government's destabilizing activities. Is this going far enough, though, or do we need to do more?
Well, I think you're going to see more sanctions and more people targeted in the future, because as we find out exactly who we can hold accountable, this is one way we can do it without provoking war or any kind of really major conflict and crisis. But this relationship that we have with Russia right now is really stressed because of Russia's misconduct. And so we have to take every avenue that we can diplomatically, and this is a diplomatic, in my opinion, diplomatic measure to go against Russia. So yeah, you might see this broaden out, but it will be targeted, it will be impactful, and I think it's going to actually bring some Russian change in their behavior. And that's really what you want. You want them to change behavior. As you know, we just heard a laundry list of what Russia's been doing.
Right.
We have to curb it, and this is one way to get at it.
What message does this send to the naysayers out there that have criticized the president for his cozy relationship with Vladimir Putin? Because the steps that have been taken by this president are among the harshest, actually, that we have seen the United States take against Russia.
Yeah, I mean, since post-Soviet Russia, this probably is the harshest measures we've seen. And, you know, you could never buy into what they were saying, because this is the same crowd that just wants to delegitimize President Trump at every turn. But if you look at his foreign policy efforts, I think he's done some pretty amazing things and has some pretty successful results with Russia. He's attacking Iran. He's attacking China. And what's happening is people around the world are starting to see that President Trump actually is making America strong again in ways that they hadn't imagined. We had a feckless foreign policy before. America was being abused throughout the world economically and diplomatically. That's not going to happen anymore under this president, and I think he's demonstrating that very clearly here.
All right, I want to move on to another topic regarding the Justice Department. And they missed a pretty important deadline yesterday. They were subpoenaed by the House Judiciary Committee for documents related to alleged FISA abuses and the DOJ's handling of the Hillary Clinton email probes. Now, you sit on this committee, and the committee basically says that they've only received about 3,000 out of, get this, for those at home, I know you know how many, of the roughly 1.2 million documents they are seeking. Why do you believe the DOJ is stalling to provide these?
Well, I mean, it certainly looks like they're stalling to prevent us from getting the real information. I think they're trying to time us out. They want to get past the midterms. I believe it's a political calculation. I'm really, really bothered by this. I think we need to be holding some people in contempt. This is, in my opinion, this sub-branch of the executive branch is disregarding a co-equal branch. And we're there. We have oversight over this area. We have jurisdiction. They need to give us those records. We should be, in my opinion, seeking contempt for some of these people if they're not going to turn these over immediately.
I mean, why wouldn't they? And you wonder what there is to hide. Because if the Department of Justice and the FBI somehow obtained a warrant and actually committed FISA abuse in the courts in order to spy on the then Trump presidential campaign using bogus information, that is a criminal act.
Oh, yeah.
Why are they, so they are stalling. The question is why and who's going to pay for it?
Well, I would say they're stalling because every time we get more information, it seems to just trickle out, right? But every time we get more information, it all points to the fact that this isn't just a one-time event, that this seems to be widespread. And if this is widespread, you know, people need to be held accountable. And I think that's why they're keeping it. They're trying to hold this undercover, keep it from getting the light of day. And this is a real problem. That's why I keep saying we need a second special counsel here, because I don't think that they're going to provide us with this information, so we need to hold people accountable with contempt. We need a second special counsel to get in and investigate this. And this is very serious business. It indicates corruption and abuse of power at the highest levels by the agencies that we think are going to help us maintain the rule of law, the people that we think are going to be objective. Why are they spying on American citizens? And this is something that has got to be stopped. And you know what really agitates me too? As you can tell, I'm a little bit agitated anyways. But I mean, all this became public knowledge after the FISA reauthorization. And so, you know, I voted against the reauthorization because I felt like we were being led along. But that, you know, you combine these two things together, that is something that's really bad for the American people.
All right, Congressman Andy Biggs, always great to see you. Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Thanks, Julie.
Well, President Trump going off script again in West Virginia this time, transforming what was supposed to be a roundtable on taxes into something much different. Whether that strategy worked to the president's advantage, we'll discuss. Plus, the White House locked in an escalating confrontation with China on trade, and it's rocking the stock market. What comes next as both countries show no sign of backing down?
He has a great relationship with the president of China. This is business, and this is the kind of business where we have to stand firm against China's unfair trade practices.
This was going to be my remarks. It would have taken about 2 minutes, but what the hell? That would have been a little boring.
Who needs scripts? President Trump literally throwing out the script yesterday in West Virginia during what was supposed to be a foundation, a roundtable on tax reform. The president took the opportunity to rail against what he called incompetent trade deals and weak immigration laws. He also slammed Democratic Senator Joe Manchin on his home turf as he gears up for a midterm re-election battle. Let's bring in Ari Fleischer, former press secretary for President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. Ari, always great to see you. I have no idea what we're going to talk about now because I threw out my script, so I'm going to go off script here. Now, in addition to, you know, proposing National Guard troops be sent to the Mexican border, as we discussed earlier, the president gave remarks on just about everything but taxes at this tax cut event. Good idea?
It is for Donald Trump. It's not for congressional Republicans. Look, there's such a difference between Donald Trump, the unique figure, bigger than life, who so many people came out of the woodwork to vote for who didn't previously vote or vote Republican, lower income, blue collar, working Americans, all of a sudden voting Republican. And he's not on the ballot this year. Republicans are, and they're cut from a very different cloth as Donald Trump. Trump can do things that the Republican Party cannot. So when he does that, it's good for him in 2020. It's not good for Republicans who want to run on taxes in 2018.
Okay, but you know that Trump supporters love when he goes off script. I mean, that was mainly the reason why he got such huge support base after, running for the presidency, because he didn't want to be your typical boring politician, and so he continues to do that. The question is, does it rub off onto Republicans who are trying to seek re-election come the midterms?
Yeah, I've seen no evidence that it rubs off in a positive way on other Republicans. In fact, if you look at all the special elections that have taken place this year, so far it's helped the Democrats to increase their turnout. Look, the president is got these amazing qualities, these amazing abilities just to do things that no typical politician would do. And it's one of the reasons he won. People are tired, as you point out, Julie, of typical politicians. But Donald Trump's not on the ballot. The Republicans are, and what they want to do is run on tax reform and the success of tax reform. I have no problem with the president throwing out his script. I'm all for it. But I wish that event also did include taxes and a focus on how tax reform is helping America.
Some of the comments that drew more attention were his claims about immigration and alleged voter fraud, particularly in the state of California, which has yet to be proven, but the president lost the popular vote, as you know, to Hillary Clinton in California. He brought that up as well, and he said basically in many places like California, the same person voted many times. He went on to call it a conspiracy theory that some say is a conspiracy theory. He said it is not a conspiracy theory and that millions of people voted fraudulently. And there's no evidence behind this theory so far. So is it still a good idea to bring it up?
Well, I think when the president brings something like that up, it's incumbent on the president to show the public why he says that. Somebody has told him that that's the case. He must have seen something or heard something, and he should share that with people so it can be evaluated. Absent that, it's a rather remarkable statement to make, and it should be backed up if he has the proof. Because if he does, the country needs to fix that. But if there's no proof for it, we need to know that as well.
All right, Ari Fleischer, thank you very much for talking to us off script. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Julie.
More turmoil in the markets, folks, amid the tariff showdown between the U.S. and China. Whether we are headed to a major trade war, we will answer that, or try to. Plus, the president stepping up his attacks on Oakland's Democratic mayor for her warning of an imminent ICE raid. The serious crime the president believes she committed. Reaction from a border congressman. Next. A Fox News alert: stocks under pressure today amid growing showdown over trade. The White House says it is considering additional tariffs on $100 billion in Chinese goods. But China warning it will fight back at all costs. President Trump, meantime, in a radio interview saying he's finally pushing back against Beijing's unfair practices.
We've already lost a trade war. We don't have a trade war. We've lost a trade war because for many years, whether it's Clinton or the Bushes or Obama, all of our presidents before have, for some reason, it just got worse and worse. And now it's $500 billion in deficits. I'm not saying there won't be a little pain, but the market's gone up 40%, 42%, so we might lose a little bit of it. But we're going to have a much stronger country when we're finished.
Let's take a look at the markets right now, down just over 350 points, dropping triple digits, in fact, amid fears of a trade war. For more on what all this means, let's bring in Jerry Willis from the Fox Business Network. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Julie. That's right. So it's the war of words going on. That's what's driving these markets down today. The Dow down as much as 407 points. As you just showed right now, down 344 points. All indexes getting impacted, and stocks like Boeing, which do big trade with China, really getting hit. So let's talk about what's going on with what the president is saying, what China is saying. As you said, the president last night said, hey, we're going to put in another $100 billion worth of tariffs on Chinese goods. China then coming back, and I'm quoting an official here, he was saying, we will immediately fight back. Now, today, this morning, in fact, the president on Twitter saying this: China, which is a great economic power, is considered a developing nation within the World Trade Organization. They therefore get tremendous perks and advantages, especially over the U.S. Does anybody think this is fair? We were badly represented. The WTO unfair to the U.S. Strong words there, but then Larry Kudlow, the president's economic advisor, weighed in as well. Listen to this.
China is not a third world country anymore. It's a first world country. All right, they have to play by first world rules. We cannot permit them to damage our economy by taking away our valuable technology. That has to stop.
Now, unlike Wednesday, when Kudlow's words were a balm to the market and we had a major turnaround in sentiment, that has not happened today. We are still down for the day. Remember, all of this got started about a month ago when the president said he was instituting tariffs on steel, 25%, and aluminum, 10%, and it has escalated from there. All eyes on when these might go into effect. Remember, these are just words so far, and what kind of impact, real impact, it might have on the U.S. economy. Back to you, Julie.
Jerry Willis, always great to see you. Thank you. President Trump slamming sanctuary cities during his stop in West Virginia yesterday as he championed stronger borders, zeroing in on Oakland's Democratic mayor for obstruction of justice. Watch this.
About the mayor of Oakland, where she tells 1,000 people to get going, law enforcement's coming to get you. And this was all planned, and many of them scattered. To me, that's obstruction of justice. And something should happen there. And it hasn't, and I don't know why it hasn't.
Why hasn't it? Congressman Duncan Hunter represents San Diego County in the House. The California Republican joins us now. Thank you very much for talking to us. What do you make of President Trump suggesting that the mayor of Oakland, California, is guilty of obstruction of justice for her role in tipping off immigrants in the country illegally due to an upcoming federal immigration raid?
Hey, great to be with you. Number one, he hit her for more than that, for aiding and abetting criminals. I mean, what Trump wants to do is put the American people first, the American citizen first, and what a large majority of California wants to do, especially the cities, they want to put illegal immigrants first. I mean, California's got it backwards. That's why California's on the leading edge of stupid on a whole lot of things like taxes, regulation, and immigration.
Why do local officials in California feel that they don't need to abide by federal immigration laws?
Because they feel like they're protecting the 1%. Which is what they're doing by protecting illegal immigrants. They're protecting a voter base here in California, too. On all the statewide elections and the city elections in California, you don't have to be an American citizen to vote. You don't have to be an American citizen in California to get your driver's license, to show up at a polling booth and then vote. That's one thing that needs to change here in the state. If we're going to see any kind of real reforms, you got to make sure that you're an American citizen to vote. I think that's pretty easy, and that's one basic thing that needs to change at the federal level. You just have to prove you're an American citizen to vote for the presidency, to vote for Senate, and to vote for the House of Representatives.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions also criticized the move. He called it reckless, and I quote, "How dare you needlessly endanger the lives of our law enforcement officers to promote a radical open borders agenda." I mean, this sort of behavior will cost lives. It's been proven. When you allow illegals that have criminal backgrounds into your cities, they will kill Americans. They will harm Americans. This is a fact. It's been done. It's been proven.
Two things. One, California is now going to be the magnet for the entire country when it comes to illegal criminals. Illegal criminals are going to want to come to California because California state law says you don't have to check the immigration status along with the crime that the person committed. So California is going to be a magnet to every illegal alien who's a criminal in the entire country. Number two, what California doesn't realize, and I think that the left doesn't realize, the reason people come here from other countries is because they don't want to live in a nation without laws like they came from. They don't want to live in poverty and where police take bribes. They don't want to have that. So that's why they come to the U.S. in the first place. By ignoring U.S. law, you're telling these people, we're going to make it just like where you came from Honduras, from Nicaragua. We're going to make it to where the laws don't count, and that's what California is doing, which is stupid. The reason people come here is to escape the bad lives that they've lived. That's why they come to the U.S. They don't want us to be like them, and that's what California is doing. California is going to become a third world nation in and of itself if they keep the open border policies that they have.
Let's talk about the open border policies that they have and what they're going to do to stop it. National Guard troops are basically being called in to protect the border. Texas, California, the governor there, Jerry Brown, a lot of pressure being put on him in order to allow these National Guardsmen to actually do what they are meant to do, and that is to finally protect our borders. What is he going to do about it? Is he going to comply?
Yeah, he has complied in the past under Obama and under President Bush. Jerry Brown's obliged with this. I don't know what he's going to do now. The Democrat Party is no longer the Democrat Party that Jerry Brown grew up in. He's like 80 years old. The Democrat Party now is more of a socialist party. It's far, far more left than it was, and than it was even when he was elected this most recent time. So I don't know what he's going to do. And you know what the National Guard has to do on the border? One of the biggest things about building the border wall is the infrastructure, the roads, the electricity for sensors. That's something that the National Guard could do now because they have to go train and build roads anyway. Why not have those construction units working on the wall while President Trump figures out how to fund it?
All right, Congressman Duncan Hunter, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
UFC star Conor McGregor charged with 3 counts of assault and 1 count of criminal mischief after an attack caught on camera. We're going to show that to you coming up next. Plus, what to expect when Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg testifies next week on Capitol Hill. Ultimate Fighting star Conor McGregor is charged with 3 counts of assault and 1 count of criminal mischief after a backstage melee caught on video, injuring 2 fighters and forcing the removal of 3 bouts Saturday night from the UFC's biggest card this year. Laura Ingle has more from our newsroom. Hi, Laura.
Yeah, this one's a mess, Julie. Those in the know say this will probably end up costing one of the most well-known MMA fighters a lot of money when the inevitable lawsuits are filed over this hand dolly hurling episode. It all happened inside the loading area at the Barclays Center. In this video obtained by TMZ, you can see McGregor, along with a group of guys, storm a bus that is pulling away. McGregor gets his hands on a dolly and tosses it like a spear into the window. McGregor was allegedly going after another UFC fighter who had some kind of altercation with a team member of McGregor's. The incident injured 3 people and caused several cuts to the face of UFC fighter Michael Chiesa, who was scheduled to fight tomorrow, but that's been called off. He tweeted today this: "A decision was made by the New York State Athletic Commission to pull me from UFC 223. That's the match. I'm devastated, to say the least. At Showtime Pettis, who is a fighter, Anthony Pettis, I hope to run this match ASAP, June 9th, in your backyard. That's all I have to say for now. Much love." So McGregor expected to be charged sometime today. In fact, maybe in the next hour. The head of the UFC says there will be other serious consequences McGregor will have to face.
And obviously everybody's shaken up when 30 thugs storm a, you know, these guys are all cutting weight and getting ready for a fight. This is the most disgusting thing that has ever happened in the history of the company. You can imagine he's going to be sued beyond belief, and this was a real bad career move for him.
When asked if he will fire McGregor, the head of the UFC said he'll deal with his future after this weekend's events are over. Julie?
All right, Laura Ingle, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is facing 2 days of testimony on Capitol Hill next week over data and privacy issues at his company. Ahead of that, COO Sheryl Sandberg said in an interview that Facebook users would have to pay to opt out entirely from allowing their data to be used for targeted ads. Patrick Tucker is technology editor for Defense One and author of The Naked Future: What Happens in a World That Anticipates Your Every Move. It is scary stuff because we are pretty much all on social media. What does Mark Zuckerberg have to fear in testifying before Congress?
Well, there's a lot for him to worry about here because Facebook, up until this time, has handled these emerging controversies, particularly around the Cambridge Analytica scandal, in a way that suggests that they very much have a lot more to hide. Here's the pattern, and I think it's going to be really disastrous for them if they repeat this, if Mark Zuckerberg in particular repeats this when he goes before Capitol Hill. A story breaks. At first, they claim that they have no idea what the journalist is talking about, and then eventually they get around to making a statement, putting it on the website, saying we acknowledge some of this stuff happened. A different story breaks related to the first. In this instance, a colleague of mine at Ars Technica brought up that Facebook was scraping telephonic metadata from its Android app. At first they say, you know what, this was an opt-in feature. The controversy continues to boil. And then they respond by saying we're going to update the way that we do business. So they very recently put together a big list of different changes that they've made, mostly to the way they interact with third parties and third-party apps. But the question that they're going to have to face, that Mark Zuckerberg in particular will have to face, is whether or not those announced steps go far enough, and whether or not lawmakers or anybody, for that matter, really understands how Facebook collects data, what they do with it, why it's important that Facebook continue to be able to have access to it the way that they have, and what sort of regulation they should be subjected to. I think everybody acknowledges now that there'll be subjected to something. And the big question for Zuckerberg, for Facebook, and for lawmakers is what form that legislation is going to take.
Yeah, Zuckerberg is scheduled to testify not once, but twice before Congress. Obviously, they'll be addressing data privacy issues in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica scandal. But what does Facebook or its users have to lose here by Zuckerberg testifying at all?
Well, in looking at how Facebook might change and the different changes that they've already announced going forward to get a handle on this issue, Facebook is going to make the argument that allowing Facebook to have more access to user data is core to the experience of using Facebook. You can find your friends more easily, especially on Messenger, because of the way that app is structured and the way that it works. You can access content more easily, and so they'll make the argument, I think, that the way you give your data to Facebook right now, that's the entire experience of it. But in terms of what users have to lose, you know, we're already subjected to lots of changes that Facebook makes in the way that it runs its site and the way stories appear in your feed and things like this on the basis of a lot of considerations. And a lot of users are already, number one, decreasing their time on site, which is huge for them, and some are actually deleting it.
Yeah, no, some are concerned that they're listening to our phone calls. Somehow, you know, conversation will end up on your Facebook feed. How'd they know that? But anyway, we will continue to watch this. Thank you very much, Patrick Tucker.
Thanks for having me.
And coming up, we're going to be hearing directly from Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg today. She will be appearing on the Daily Briefing live with Dana Perino. That's happening this afternoon at 2 p.m. Eastern, just minutes from now. So stay tuned to that. Senator Bernie Sanders lambasting the Democratic Party for a business model he says has been a 15-year failure. Does he make a convincing argument? We'll ask our panel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, live from Facebook headquarters. Sheryl Sandberg, the chief operating officer. She's been here 10 years, and that company has changed a ton since then. It's now a big tech giant and facing some pretty hefty heavy hitters next week in Congress as Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO, heads to Washington, D.C. to testify in front of Congress on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'll ask her about a range of questions from your data privacy to the news feed to lots of other things. So stay tuned. For the top of the hour, there will be a live interview with Sheryl Sandberg.
All right, Senator Bernie Sanders taking the Democratic Party to task. During an appearance in Mississippi, the former presidential candidate pointing out the party's losing streak at the state level, something he argues was overshadowed by the Obama presidency.
The business model, if you like, of the Democratic Party for the last 15 years or so has been a failure. Over the last 10 years, the Democrats have lost about 1,000 seats in state legislatures all across this country.
Let's bring in our power panel now. Jake McCobey is a former chief speechwriter for Attorney Generals Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. And Kristen Tate is a contributor at The Hill and author of the new book, How Do I Tax Thee? Thank you both for talking to us. All right, Kristen, you know, Sanders is right. Clearly, the Democratic Party has been falling flat. It depends on who's, you know, looking at it, a decade, 2 decades, who knows. Why? What's wrong with their playbook?
Well, you're right. He's correct on many levels. I mean, think about what the Democratic Party used to represent in the days of JFK and even Bill Clinton. It was the party of working Americans that advocated for lower taxes and even a secure border. These are the issues that got constituents to their feet applauding. But today's Democrats stand for open borders, higher taxes, late-term abortions, and allowing men into women's bathrooms. The party has become completely out of touch with the very people who used to make up its core constituency. But here's the thing. It's very easy for Bernie to bash his own party, but his own ideas are even more extreme and even more toxic. What I think Bernie doesn't understand is that the Democrats don't win by batting to the left. They win by batting to the center.
Jake, is Bernie blaming the same Democratic Party that unsuccessfully got him into the White House? Because he didn't do so hot of a job on the campaign trail.
Well, look, actually, Bernie Sanders is saying the same thing that a lot of Democrats have said, including, by the way, President Obama, who said that we've had a hard time getting our voters to the polls in non-presidential elections. That continues to be true. But that was especially true in 2010 when the Democrats got a real beatdown at the ballot box. And as a result of that, Republicans who won in that year gerrymandered themselves into a bunch of safe districts. And that's been bad. That's been certainly bad for Democrats, but it's also been bad for democracy. So now going forward, you're seeing Democrats really wake up to that. You've seen even over the last year, Democrats have shown up in Alabama, Virginia, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, and they're not just showing up to vote, they're showing up to run. You've had a record number of Democrats running across the country, including a record number of women. So Democrats are ready to roll on this one.
Is this something, though, Kristen, that, a demonstration maybe that Republicans should take note of? Because if Democrats have been falling flat for the last decade and a half, that includes under the Obama administration. President Obama was doing quite well as far as being reelected, but it didn't help his party. Is that something Republicans should look forward to come the midterms? Just because they have President Trump in the White House is not going to protect that.
Oh, absolutely. And I just want to point out here, Democrats have a lot of problems going on right now. They don't have a clear message, but Republicans haven't been much better. The Republicans got the House, the Senate, and the White House, and what have we gotten for that? We got that terrible spending bill, which is the most liberal spending bill in recent memory, which fully funds Planned Parenthood, sanctuary cities, and actually forbids the construction of the border wall. So Republicans should not get too comfortable right now. Conservative voters across the country do support Trump. He has an 85% approval rating among them, but they do not overwhelmingly support Republicans in Congress. There's a disconnect there. So, yeah, Republicans should not get too comfortable.
Okay, but, Jake, the tax cuts, I mean, they have done this country very well. And let's not forget that. So, I mean, the Republicans have that. What do the Democrats have?
Well, they've certainly done the wealthiest Americans very well, and that's absolutely
But
true.
everybody has seen a tax cut.
Well, a lot of people have seen a tax cut at the top. Some of that tax money has trickled down to folks at the bottom, but a lot of that comes due later on when people's taxes go up if you're making under $75,000 a year. What Democrats are pushing for are better jobs, better opportunities for all Americans, including better wages, by the way. The trouble is Republicans have been banging this drum on tax cuts for the wealthy for a long time, and they don't seem to have a whole lot else to run on.
We got to go. I am so sorry. Jake McCobie, thank you very much. Kristen Tate, we have another live program after this one, so we can't take up all the time. Thank you both.
Thanks, Julie.
We'll be right back.